Hey everybody, it's Tim Hinton, the Beast of the Marching Arts. How you doing? I'm here with John Bogenschutz again. John, how are you?
Good. How you doing, Tim?
I'm doing awesome. And also on the line with us, Jenny Neff. Jenny, how are you?
Great. How are you guys?
Good. So thanks for taking time to talk with us. So, John, how do you know Jenny?
We met at Midwest, and we've talked every now and then in relation to another podcast that we had done before.
Cool. So, Jenny, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself? Where are you in the world and what kind of work do you do?
Okay, so I am Associate Professor of Music Education at University of the Arts, which is located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I've been there since 2018. I started fall of 2018. Before that, I taught for 25 years in the public schools, mainly instrumental music at the secondary level. So kind of done a lot of different things, even some elementary general music starting off first and then going into band and high school marching band and all that's entailed with a high school instrumental job. And then moving to Pennsylvania, my home state, moving back to my home state and going to middle school, which if you asked me a long time ago, I would have said I would have never done, but then I ended up spending most of my career there. So
Very
it's kind of
cool.
cool because, at UArts now, when I start to think, why did I have all these different jobs? Then you kind of know because I've done all these different things. So it's pretty cool.
All makes you more valuable. So we're here to talk about time management, using your time wisely. So we're all finding ourselves at home. Sometimes some of us, a lot of people are home right now, working from home, or school is shut down, they're on long breaks, whatever. So I like this idea. John, why is Jenny the right person to talk to about time management stuff?
This is her wheelhouse. Like every time I see her like write an article about something or talking about something, it's like, oh, okay, well, this makes sense that this is the topic that was chosen. So
Cool. So we're going to give lots of tips to people. So this is sort of general time management stuff, but also specifically now for this time, would you say, Jenny?
Yeah, I think so. And I think especially as musicians, we're often pretty good at time management and maybe not always. So this kind of transition to being at home for some people can really throw them for a loop. So it's an interesting topic to talk about.
Very good. So what's the first, what's the main thing you want to tell me? What's the first tip that you want to start with?
I would say a schedule, creating a schedule, and that sounds maybe a little contrived, but I think without it for musicians, we can't really place all the projects that we have within our day. There's never enough time in the day for us. And I just think it's great to make sure you have all of that outlined. I know for me, when I switched from being a teacher every day and having every single minute of the day blocked out and even the Pavlovian bells ringing to tell me when to do the next thing, and then I went to higher ed and I was like, wow, my day's not scheduled. I have this 3-hour block of class and then it's like wide open, yet I still have all these projects. So how do I do that? And so that's when I realized like how really structured as music educators we are. We live our lives by time. I mean, even our marching band shows how much time do we have, get on and off the field, that sort of thing. What do you have to cut? What do you have to add in? So I think it only makes sense for us to kind of think along those lines. And I think too, it helps us create some work-life balance for ourselves. Otherwise, we could work around the clock with technology today. So it's a really kind of important framework to set up.
See, that's really interesting that you say that because when I was first a band director, I was such a workaholic. Like I was all job all the time. I literally had to schedule not work times. Like I'm going to go to a movie with friends on Wednesday night. I had to put it on my calendar. I'm not proud to admit that, but I did learn to get a better work-life balance, but I didn't have one at the beginning. John, do you guys schedule your time with the boys at home and everything?
yeah, we have we knew that we were gonna have a rough outline with the boys' schedule at home, but then one of our friends put down like she put on Facebook, hey, this is our time to do this. Like here's a break, and she would put in breaks and stuff, and I was like, I'm stealing that. So that's what we've been sticking to, and it's been great because we'll just have okay, we have an hour and a half here, and then we'll have an hour here and then an hour and a half there, which doesn't seem like a lot, but they get a lot done those 3.5 or 4 hours.
Yeah,
Very
and
interesting.
I think it's one of those things too where like it's so valuable to us and there's never enough of it, but yeah, we can lose track of it so easily. So like setting up, like John's saying, setting up that structure where, you change. Sometimes I'll even, sounds annoying, but I'll set up an alarm on my phone, like, okay, I'm done working on this now, like time to move to something else. Or, 3 hours later, you're like, whoa, what happened?
Hey, listen, I will
Yeah.
tell you that would be my tip is I use the alarm on my phone all the time. And I will remind myself 5 minutes before a meeting, or I'll set something at the end of an hour when I need to stop working. Like I use my alarm on my phone all the time. And I love it now because I get to just talk to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey Siri, set up an alarm. Oh, never mind Siri.
All our phones are going off right now.
I know, sorry. So what does your schedule look like? Do you do it like by the hour or in chunks, or like what does yours look like, Jenny?
Well, for me, it's mine kind of goes around what my projects are. A lot of my stuff is really project oriented or schedule oriented right now, as far as meetings and stuff like that. So, even this past couple weeks, moving to online classes, I changed things a little bit, just kind of reevaluated like my system, and I think everybody's kind of done that in the last few weeks or will be soon. And I think for me, it was looking at when I have things that I have to do and then seeing when those other chunks of time are open and how things will fit in there. Because, you still have that to-do list and you're trying to get that done, but yet you have meetings here and there, and then you're like, whoa, I never got to anything. So I think for me, like the priorities are going to be deadlines, obviously, and then meetings that you have to do, and then where can you fit some of those other things in. And so, yeah, I think project planning for me is another big topic. That's kind of what we're getting into. So, for me, a to-do list doesn't always cut it anymore. I wrote a blog on this a while ago for Alfred, but it was like, you have all these things to do and you have to figure out when to do them. And it seems like some of those things never leave the list because they're just continuous, or, they're bleeding into other projects. So, a lot of times for my day, I'll say like, what is my big three? I have this thing called the big three. That I got from somebody in business, and I'll say like, what is the big three, like 3 things I have to do today. And I started that when I did my dissertation because I was fortunate enough to have a sabbatical for the year and I needed some structure at home. And so I just thought every day I'm going to have 3 things I can do. One might be a little more intense as far as focus goes, but then I'd put something really easy, like mindless task, like punching holes in paper or something, like, so you had some choices, but you feel like you made some progress. And I think musicians are really good at that because we are so process oriented. We can go into a practice hour or practice room for like hours and hours and come out thinking, well, I think I made a dent in that, but you don't necessarily have anything to show for it yet until it comes to maybe concert or recital time or performance time. So I think just kind of keeping that like what's at the forefront of the day. And I think too, as a band director, like you'd have things you wanted to do, and by 10 o'clock in the morning, those things were all gone and something else had come up and the principals come down with this and you have a crisis here and you're putting out all these fires and, dealing with kids who you're there to work with, and, you want to be there for them. So just making sure that at the end of the day, you had that post-it that said, before I leave today, I have to do these 3 things. That was really helpful for me. So I think it would probably still work in this situation today.
Yeah, definitely.
I like the 3 things, John. Do you ever do
Yeah.
that? Like, do you do that? Like prioritize your things?
One of my things on my list was prioritize, but I really like the making like highlight it like, hey, these top 3 things, because in my head, I guess I kind of do that, but I never thought about it like, hey, these are the top 3 things, because I know like, oh, I have to make sure I get these posters done, I have to draw this comic and whatever. But yeah, I think if I highlighted them at the beginning, that would be good.
And I think a lot of people don't write them down, Jenny, but I do think it's helpful to sort of maybe start your day and make a list. In fact, I've heard a lot of people say, like big CEOs of corporations say that's like their big tool is they start the day and they make some sort of list, prioritized list, like sort of like what you're saying, so that they don't end up just sort of floundering around. Because I know I've spent some days where I'm doing all this stuff, and at the end of it, I'm like, well, what did I do? I did a lot of stuff.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And you're like, what got done? No, wait, I still have that same list, like, And I think too, like I did get that from a CEO. I had to interview someone for a leadership project, and he talked about his big three, and he also went a step further, like color coded things, and so you can get all fancy with it. I think too, we moved to everything being so digital that now like that writing it down sometimes is really helpful, and we kind of forget about that. So I think that's another thing you can do. I think too, when I have big projects, I was reading last year a book on productivity, and I started writing like what my projects were kind of like horizontally on a piece of paper, or you could do it digitally if you want. And then, you would put your tasks, like each step, because I think you see like, maybe for John, it's like I have to do this poster, this cell, but it's like there are 10 steps involved in that. So what steps can I tackle? How much time do I have? Maybe that helps get you started, because some people see their list and they're like, I don't have time to do that. There's so much involved in that. I can't even do that right now. So breaking it down into like mini to-dos is, I think, helpful too.
Yeah, like I would do that when I wrote marching band stuff. I would put everything that I would have to write for that season. So like it would be like Zeus High School opener, and like Zeus High School ballad, but whatever, and I would cross it off, but I would have every high school on there, so I would be scratching each one off as I would go along. So it would be daunting at first, but it started to manage down to the end where I'm like, oh, I only have 3 left. This is great.
Man, I totally wish I had graduated from Zeus High School. How cool is that? Zeus High School. I love that.
Mascot too, like
The what?
Is their mascot also Zeus?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's Hercules Middle School, and
cool. Very cool.
And then you see Hades if you misbehave. Yeah, I see how that you go to the underworld. I get it. It's all working for me. Very cool. All right. Well, all this makes sense to me. I love the idea of subtasking, because I think you're right. You look in like if you have on your list to do this giant thing, you're like, I don't have time. But if you look at, oh, I can do the 3 first things, yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think
Jenny, you mentioned briefly back there about project planning.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw this on your list, and I was curious about what you're going to say about this. Do you want to talk about that now, or do you want to wait?
Yeah, well, I think for me, my project planning is a little bit of what we were just talking about, like, making sure that the deadlines are driving things, keeping that big picture in mind, and just knowing that we have to break things down into those subtopics. I know a lot of people have used like project management software and things like that. I've tried some of that, and I think that might be helpful when you have a team of people and you're breaking down tasks and sharing that. I know some people use Evernote and things like that. So, you can go digital with it. For me, I just kind of created a system that works for me, and that happens to be paper. I keep a paper calendar and a digital calendar, but that's also because I want to visually see, like if I have a big project, or let's say I'm guest conducting, or I'm doing professional development for a school district, then I need to know, okay, these 2 events are going on this weekend. I need a chunk of time to plan this out, to communicate with that school district or what have you, to get things prepared. So just making sure that we don't overschedule too, I think is really important. And that, for as much as the project planning can help doing your project, it can also help you make sure you're not doing projects all the time. And one of the big ahas for me this year was going to see that. Did you guys see that Mr. Rogers Neighborhood movie at all? And at one point in the movie, he says, like, what is your practice? And it was just like, whoa, mind blowing, like light bulb went off for me. Because I think as musicians, we think of practice as like a verb, like I got to go practice, I got to go shed, whatever, I have practice. And instead, it was like, what is it that we're doing? What are we setting up every day that is our practice? So I think being mindful of like how you want your day to run, and how I think we almost create our own stress at times because of how we've set up, our schedule or our projects, and knowing when to say, like, I don't have time for that one right now, but I'd love to come back and help you with it later. I learned to say no a lot this year, or to push back with people and say, you know what, I can do that, and I really want to do this project, but can we look at it in a month? would you be okay if I got you something in this amount of time? So that probably comes to the third tip, which would be the drawing the margins. Yeah.
This is the one where when I saw this on your list, I'm like, all right, this is what I want to hear about. And I was even curious, like, what does she mean by this? And I looked at it, I'm like, okay, this makes perfect sense. But this seems like a great topic.
I don't know what she means yet, so listen.
Right.
So I read another book, and I wish I meant to pull them out today so I could tell you the authors, and I don't have them handy, but there was one about margins and drawing margins, and pretty much like what so many musicians do, and teachers too, like, and music educators, which are both of those put together, right? So I think we say yes to so many things, and we put so many things on our plate, and we're like, we have to build a resume, and I got to do this, and I can't put the baton down, and that sort of thing, keep busy, and all these side hustles and side gigs, and for me, it's like, oh, I do this as my job now, but I still miss having an ensemble, so I want to make sure I can do some of this and go back and, still stay in both worlds a little bit. But I think it's really important to draw those margins. And, we think of margins on the paper and the edge of the paper, and if you kind of translate that to like the edge of the project, in the productivity book I was reading, they were talking about how our projects no longer have edges, that they kind of continue into the next thing. It used to be like, oh yeah, I got that done, I can cross that off my list. And now it's, with technology and everything so just at the touch of our fingers 24/7, we could just keep working and working and going on to the next thing. And so I think drawing your own margins, like you'd have those empty spaces on the sides of the page, like we kind of have to create our own margins. And otherwise, we could work all day. So for me too, like margins are also, this has been interesting working from home, even for like a month. I don't know if you guys have found, or a week, not a month. If you guys have found this over the last week or two being at home, working online, I had to create physical space because I felt like I could set my computer up at the kitchen table and like the sun would rise and the sun would set. Or I would turn on the Today Show, and then before you know it, it's like the noon news instead of like the morning shows, and I'm just sitting at my computer. So I said, enough of this. Like, I need to make sure that my physical space, I draw margins now, that in my office is where I will do the work, and I'm not just going to go to any part of the house to do work, because then there's really no division or divider between when is work and what is just living in your house and, working for a living versus, or what do they say, work to live versus living to work, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think any people in the music world are like slackers sitting on their couch doing nothing. We're all really busy. And so I think we do have to create physical margins and project margins, draw those lines for ourselves to know when to kind of stop and pause. I don't know about you guys. And John, now that you have the kids at home, homeschooling, right?
Well, hearing you explain, I'm like, that makes perfect sense. And I think a tip for people who may not have the room, like what we do for the schooling is like my middle kid's in the dining room on that table. I'm in the kitchenette area with the 7-year-old, and I'm helping him every day at 3 o'clock when they're done, like definitely done. They may get done early, but when they're definitely done, we pack up their stuff, and we have a little spot that we put it, so that way through the rest of the night is not like, oh, this is where school was, but like school's done, it's now family time type stuff.
Yeah, I think it's stressful too. I've heard, a lot of people trying to figure out their online content as music teachers, having to switch over this in the past couple of weeks to online schooling, that there's a lot going on in houses. We have some parents who are teachers who have their own kids at home so that they're safe and healthy. And, they have 3 kids running around, and maybe even one they can't run around yet because it's toddler or whatever. And then they're an infant, and then they're trying to do things online. So I think just trying to, during this crazy time, recognize that it's like, this is not our normal. This is a little bit of like teaching triage. And we need to think about just like, what were our original objectives? Can we maybe simplify that so that we're not trying to do everything we were going to do in our classroom in a normal situation? and just kind of prioritize and make it as simple as possible, and realize that people have other stuff going on. We have, some people who have parents who are working at home and kids. There aren't enough laptops to go around. Everybody's on a conference call. The Wi-Fi isn't working, to, kids who don't have access to anything, or don't have Wi-Fi. So just trying not to put so much pressure on ourselves, and just keeping it really simple.
Well, I'll tell you, I work from home all the time. So my life hasn't really changed that much, except that there are a lot more people at home. It's easier to get hold of people. But I always sit in my office. But I will tell you, I have an office, which is my workspace. And then the rest of my house is the rest of my house. So when I stop to go to lunch, I know I'm just walking out the door of my office into my other house. But it feels like a division of space. And I do think that's really important for me. The other thing that I will tell you that I have this conversation a lot with people who are working from home or trying to work from home, is that you have to get your family to understand, okay, mommy now needs to go in and have her hour to do her work. And you guys, I've heard people say, don't interrupt me unless somebody's bleeding or the house is on fire. Otherwise, you don't interrupt me. So, in other words, setting some boundaries for I need my workspace, and somebody's going to watch those kids, and you like sort of claim your time and space. I think that for mothers who are, or anybody that's home with kids now that's not normally trying to work from home, you have to define that. You have to say, I really need the next hour and a half to go do something, and you guys need to leave me alone, So I think that's helpful too, to remind people that you can say, you can get them to buy into the fact that you just need to be left alone.
Yeah, that's your time that's carved out for that, right? Like, you're really just unavailable, right? I know a lot of people who teach from home, and you just know that, like, if there's an emergency going in the house, like, unless it's on fire, you're not available, right? So
you can probably wait until the end of your hour is up. And you really have to, I think people are terrible at doing that, because they think I have to be there for my kids, and what if something happens? But I promise you, if you're watching this, if you will claim that and just take it and go do that hour and close the door, when you open that door again, everybody's going to be okay, and you will have gotten twice as much done because you had no interruptions. So I do think, and that also includes maybe not checking your email, not looking at Facebook, turn your phone off even, and say, let me do this, really focus on this, because you know how that distracting that can be. I can go to Facebook because I need to post something, and then 45 minutes later, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even make my post, but I just watched 12 cat videos, and somebody, I don't do that very much, but I have gone down that rabbit hole. So,
well,
by the way, I wanted to mention this, John. Just last night, I did a webinar with one of your friends, Joni Perez.
Yeah.
From the Woodlands. Such a wonderful person. Her and her assistant, Kyle Whitty, were on. If anybody is watching this and you haven't seen that, go to Marching Arts Education. It's a free webinar. But here's what I wanted to mention. That day, they had started Zoom sectionals. So they had 7 different sectionals during the day, and the kids all signed on to Zoom, and they were running sectionals. And if you watch the very first 5 minutes of that, they explain how they did that, because I knew they had, and I was like, this is helpful. So there's a way that they're actually engaging their students. Of course, the thing that was coolest about it was the kids got to be back together. They got to see their friends. They got to have that sort of social time, and they felt like that was even more important than any playing they got to do on that first day. But there's a system that they made that work. So they scheduled their day, and they had 7 online sectionals. But it's just a way to keep the kids engaged, keep them playing. It was very cool. So everybody watched the first 5 minutes of that. There's also going to be an excerpt talking about how they did Zoom sectionals on Facebook and on YouTube, so anybody can find those there.
Nice. That's great.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Very cool.
I know you have that breakout in Zoom. You also have the breakout rooms that you can use. I haven't used that, but I know a lot of other people have. I don't know if that's what they used, but it's pretty cool, because you can divide people up, and then they get a little timer and a little warning bell to come back in. And I think it's been great to hear people just being able to connect with their students. I think that's the biggest thing right now. We're talking about schedules and all this stuff, but do make time to connect with the kids, because we know that that's why, we were all in it, because it's partly social, right? And I think the younger the kids are, the more extrinsically motivated they are. They like being connected with other people. A lot of people didn't get to say bye to their kids. Some kids didn't even get their instruments. So, for classrooms where they're coming to our room all day long, any minute of free time, morning, afternoon, as they come in the building, as they leave the building, it's really important to connect. And you were talking about, Tim, like scheduling your free time, and I've done that with some of my friends even. Like we'll be missing being around other people because music educators we're so used to being like the everything to everybody all day long, and then we went to like nothing, we're like just on this screen, and that's not how we really connect, right? None of us said like, oh, I built this rapport with my computer screen, right? So I think just knowing that you can schedule time in your day too to talk to friends. Like we're all really busy, but I might say to my friend Lori, hey, let's talk at 1 o'clock. Are you free? And she'd be like, yeah, my youngest is taking a nap. I can do that, and just schedule that in too. And everybody needs the connections, the teachers, the kids. So it's a different time. So it seems a little like scheduled and contrived, but otherwise it might not happen.
Yeah.
No, I'm all for doing that. In fact, there's a podcast coming out on Monday. I had a conversation with Keith Potter, Rick Subel, and Siobhan Garcia. These are three super tall, super big, important color guard people. And we're talking about the sudden shutdown of their WGI season. But this is the main point they made, was they're working really hard to stay connected to all those members, a lot of whom they just suddenly it was done. And they never even got to have a final get together or goodbyes or anything, but they're setting up ways to communicate and stay in touch with those students and get together. And there are also people, by the way, having virtual happy hours. Are you guys aware of this? Yeah. I'm not suggesting that you can have your Kool-Aid if you want to, but there are people that are all getting on Zoom calls or Skype or something, and they're just spending time together. I think that's, in this moment right now, unbelievably important.
Yeah, and I think too, it's just, not only just to connect with your friends and your colleagues who you don't see every day now, but you would see every minute, every other day, like just to debrief about your day, because it is different. This is like a new normal. It's not normal. So debriefing, going around, even when we talk with our students, like, how's your week going? How's your day? What's your biggest obstacle? What's your biggest win, that sort of thing. And even last night we were just playing Cards Against Humanity, just for fun, and everybody had their beverage, and just to kind of
doing this virtually.
You can do it. Yeah.
Oh, that's such a great idea. I hadn't even thought about that. I am totally going to do that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah, but we need to stay connected. That's the thing. Don't be isolated. And I say to my friends all the time, they're checking in, and I'm like, let's schedule a FaceTime call. Like, keep checking in with me, because it's weird to be isolated. And even if it's just like, hey, how are you?
Yeah.
A little, how you doing, Wendy Williams? Like, just check in. I'm doing the pop culture references today, man. But
yeah,
so, is there anything else that you wanted to say about management before we end this? Time management.
I think we've kind of covered it, just the creating the schedule, drawing those margins, project planning, thinking about like what I call life-work balance instead of work-life balance. And just in the end, I think whatever works for you, you have to figure out what is going to work for you, for your situation, for your family, your school, your department, what have you. And that might change from situation to situation, different times in your life too. So just to be aware of it. Yeah.
John, did you have anything you came in with we didn't get to?
No, my big two were like the making the lists. Like I always do that, and then prioritizing that list. So. Yeah,
and the thing I love that you've said, Jenny, is the thing about scheduling time not to work. And I'll just tell one more story, not to get off on a tangent, but like there was a time a couple years ago I got so busy that I stopped doing my like daily reading. Like, I love to read, and I love that, really is good for me, and I stopped doing it. I just didn't give myself the time. And for a New Year's resolution one year, I'm like, I look back at the number of books I read, I'm like, this is not working for me. And I literally started scheduling after dinner. I'm going to take that 30, 45 minutes. I'm going to give myself time to read. I can tell you, my life balance went through the roof. Suddenly I was doing better work. I was, like the whole thing, because I needed that. So whatever that is for you, whether it's exercise or playing tennis or playing Cards Against Humanity or playing with your kids or doing board games, John, or like whatever it is, I think you need to schedule that time for yourself too.
Yeah, I think creative people really need to recharge. Absolutely. And we spend so much time and energy, emotionally, physically, cognitively, that we really need to make sure we recharge. And if we're going to work hard, we got to play hard too.
I love it. John, this has been great, man. Thanks for getting Jenny to get together with us. This has been
no
really,
problem.
really good stuff.
Having me,
Sure,
it's
we
really
grab
fun.
her on like 100 more times with different topics.
Let's do it. We all got extra time, right? Thank you, Jenny, for joining. Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thanks so much.